So, ma'am, now we spoke about, the contribution of the Vagyekara, like Tyagaraja-Swami, Muthuswami Dikshidhar, Shyama Shastri, and the evolution of Kriti format, etc. Now, the next big thing is the contribution of the singer, which which is added on top of sometimes the contributions of the Vagyekaras to I don't know how many degrees. Probably 50 has become 100 or 50 has become 60. We don't know. So could you, ma'am, especially since you have also done a great deal of research in the concerts also that that has happened over the last so many decades, if you could shed some light on what do you think has been the contribution of the singers towards this Kriti format?
First of all, of course, the ornamentations that each one has tried to put into the Kriti. We have to also understand that now there are two things. Some may say that the Kriti should not be tampered with. There is one school which says that. But some people say that after all, a concert is the presentation of the creativity and virtuosity of the artist also. So if everybody is going to sing the Kriti the same way, I'm not going to come back to a concert to listen to X or Y. So my idea is to see the interpretation of that composer, of that particular artist, of that composition. So that is what brings us to a concert. So there is a two way of looking at it. But nevertheless, we see that the Kriti, probably it was not as sophisticated and as loaded with the Sangatis and other intricate forms as it was composed earlier. But then you see that we have also evolved. And music is something very dynamic. If it becomes static, then there's no purpose actually. So the dynamism of music is what makes it so lively, and it develops over the periods of time actually. As much as Manodharma, we see that even the Kriti has undergone a lot of changes, and in that sense. Here, I would also like to just add one more aspect that the Kriti has devised by Tyagaraja. After that, you see that some people have added the Swara Sahityam. Then you see that Chittaswarams. So probably it's also thought of the composer that so much has already been done. What do I do with the Kriti to add more to it, which has not been done by the Trinity? So that's where I think a lot of Chittaswarams came in, and then the Swara Sahityam, another brilliant, like Thiruvaru Ramaswamy Pillai and other people who have done brilliant Swara Sahityams. That is one thing. The most important thing about the Kriti is that the format of the Kriti has become very, very acceptable, I would say, both for the performer as well as the listener. So in that sense, we see that many other non-Kriti forms have come to become a part of the concert. And in the process, they have been tailored to become a Kriti. What do I mean by that? For example, if you take the Ashtapadi, the Tarangam. The Tarangam is actually an opera. It is not a Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam format that you're seeing. There are other aspects to it. You have introduction, slokas. And in fact, most of it we have chopped off when we are singing it as part of the Kacheri. And Ashtapadi, the name itself, Ashtapadi. But then when we are singing it, you see Chandana Charchita, when you're singing, you sing one portion as the Pallavi, then 2 Charanams maximum with the Mudhra Charanam. Or if you take the Narayana Tirtha Tarangam, all the top, bottom, everything is chopped off, and then it becomes a Kriti with a Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam. Like this, every format. In fact, why? Even you see the earlier forms like the Divya Prabandham, everything for that matter. Now, even the Tirupugal, I happened to listen sometime where they have really made it into a Kriti format with Neravel Swaram. Of course, here you have to also understand one important point is that why it has happened. There are reasons in terms of the historical perspectives and each time what is happening. At one time, these Tarangams, Ashtapadis, everything were only part of the bhajana. Now they have come into the concert, secondly. So now we have adopted them as part of the Tukadas. That is one thing. But in the last 50 years, we also see an important development in terms of thematic concerts, which was not there earlier. Earlier, it was general kachari, starting with the Varnam or Pulya Kirtane, then the format. Now, there are so many thematic presentations happening. The thematic is not only about, say, Tyagaraja Aradhana featuring Tyagaraja Kriti or Dikshadhar Aradhana featuring Dikshat Kritis. We also have a Tarangam festival where I have been to Tirupandurthi many times. So there, when I used to, after singing, I'll sit and observe there. You see that the same Tarangam will be sung in 3 ragams by 3 people. You won't even know, one would have sung and got down in, say, Maya Malagola, the same thing after that. Jaya Jaya, for example, Swamin, I know it
Yeah.
in Maya Malagola, I've heard it in Nata. You may sing it in even Kambodi, because we don't have the original tune. But nevertheless, the point is that we are trying to make it into the format of a Kriti and singing, because that is the most popular form it has come actually. So
Right.
every composition for that matter, you see that uh, all the other formats, Divya Prabandham, Tevaram, everything, when it is there in its original position, it is intact. But when it becomes a part of the when is doing a Tevaram, he will do it in a very traditional way, and he is not going to alter anything. But then when I'm going to bring it into the Kacheri fold, automatically the how do I load it with Sangatis, how do I try to use a briga, how do I, these kind of things are there. I mean, this is a
Correct.
natural process. Like there's so many forms. If you take even the bhajans, abangs, everything, you see that all of them have finally come into the Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charana format.
Current
Of course, the
format.
Tillana has been saved because the Tillana itself is only as having Pallavi, Anupallavi, and Charanam. There is no other, of course, the structure in terms of the Sollikatte and other things are there, but then the format is Pallavi, Anupallavi, so there is no problem in that. But interestingly, this is very, very important to understand that all forms which have come into the Kacheri, they've all been really tailored in terms of becoming a Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam format, and that too, the most popular format of Tyagaraja's type, where
Right.
the Anupallavi is tuned. You see in Govardhana Giridhara, for example,
Correct. Correct.
Govardhana Giri, na, 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 na,
Ah,
na. That same thing will get repeated in the Charanam. So this
correct.
format became, even among the different types of kritis, this particular format became very, very popular. So all of them have now are actually different forms of kritis, rather than saying that a tarangam, though we call it a tarangam ashtapadi, it is
Right.
actually again, and of course in this point we would also like to add that this is again my personal view, that the Pancharatnam, which we call as kritis, I would neither put it into a kriti nor a varnam or something. It's a class apart by itself. Never before, never after, like that. And
Correct.
that is how it is. So they are a genre by themselves. You have to just, for common understanding, we call them Pancharatna Kirtana or Kriti for that matter. So this
Right.
transition which has happened for the Kriti from the original status to becoming a concert form, because ultimately you want to craft it. The
Right.
kacheris after all are crafting the music to be presented in a aesthetic manner to the audience. So whichever
Correct.
clicks that happens, and that's where I see that the Kriti has become a very, very important form in terms of being the role model for many things to come into.
It's actually very beautiful, ma'am, because the way you summarize this and the way you mentioned this, especially about the development of the Kriti in the modern concert stage, it's so interesting to look at it when you look back, and we all discuss, as we discussed in the last few minutes, a particular format getting developed or getting more defined during the Trinity period, where they have given enough thought to the melodic structure and everything, and that getting accepted by the people, and that remaining the main format, the most favorite format
Yeah,
for everybody to follow, both the
yeah,
musician as well as the listeners, and everything starting getting adapted to that format. It's a very
exactly.
beautiful process. It's very interesting. Of course, it's not to say it's right or wrong. Everybody will have their own viewpoints on
No,
whether it is
even
right or
after
wrong.
200 years, you're seeing that now that format is only standing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
So
it's not to speak
survival of the
about the
fittest, again, it's very much evident here.
correct. Absolutely, ma'am. And also, ma'am, it is also a very critical point, because you mentioned about the concerts. I think today, with the times becoming more of the fast paced, even the 4 hour kacheri or 5 hour kacheris and all you had in the past is no more possible today. If it was live, it was 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Now if it is online, possibly they listen only for 15-20 minutes and they
Correct,
move to the next channel.
correct, correct.
This fast pace, the typical repetition also becomes, as you rightly said, difficult for the singer to give, because then he says, then what am I giving you in 20 minutes? So 20 minutes, if he's singing the same thing 3 times with the same melodic structure, it doesn't appeal to both. So then the Kriti is a very good plug to use as a format that
Correct.
appeals in the short time also. So I
Mm,
think
mm.
all these things have very nicely contributed. And one question that I would like to check back with you. One thing that I wanted to ask you. In later times, now when we say Vagyekara itself, it is a person who has both the lyrics as well as the Sangeetam, who merges it together and gives it. But in later times, you had this development of the composer and the lyricist. Especially modern times, you have a lot of lyrics that are getting composed by either musicians or others into. Maybe he's composing also in a Kriti format, and he's giving the music also in a Kriti format. What do you think of those kind of influx of those kind of compositions, ma'am?
Samamurthy has given you the answer already, saying Uttama Vagyekara, Madhyama Vagyekara, and Adhama Vagyekara. He's been, I think, trendsetter and given you answers for everything. So he says that he would call somebody a Uttama Vagyekara, a great Vagyekara, only if he is the composer of the music and the lyrics. So the next category, of course, is what we call as the kind you're talking about. They're all very medium composers. And interestingly, he also mentions about the Adama, which you would see in the what we call in cine field. You would have seen like get reminded of that composition. So where the met is composed first and then the words are composed. So that is something most inappropriate according to. So I mean, ultimately, on a serious note, of course, from what you asked, a true Vagyekara, the word itself gives you the complete understanding. Vagyekara, the one who is able to simultaneously compose both the Vak and the Geya. So in the Vak and Geya means the lyrics and the melody. Of course, this is also the reason why we hail the Trinity as supreme, in the sense that it's not like, we say in Tamil, room potu yosikiradu, it's not like that, So where, it was a beautiful outpour. Of course, that is again, we all have to understand that it's absolute divine grace which made them the composers unparalleled, of course. But then how you see that when the music, the lyrics, the talam or the layam, everything comes as an outpour, then simultaneously it is a hallmark of excellence. And that is why you would have said that, though you would have seen that there are at least, to my knowledge, more than 10,000 compositions to have been composed after the Trinity, still we go back to them for everything, is because of the fact that
correct.
And of course, even if somebody composes the lyrics and the music, we also as musicologists or musicians understand to what extent the song is able to bring out the raga bhava. So that also is an important element in terms of understanding the cadre of that composition. So sometimes we say, in fact, I tell my student, this is a very trivial composition. Why don't you sing Bala Gopala, or why don't you sing Laliteshi Prakriti? So at that time, you understand that these songs are beautifully portray the ragam. So it is not just about a Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam. Again, by following, you don't become a great composer. How much of the raga bhava you are able to bring out. And of course, also the fact that you don't repeat the same thing, because if you're going to repeat what the Trinity have already in terms of the musical ideas, you don't become a great composer. In fact, that way, very modestly, I would say, in terms of composition, we have not really added much to the already composed ragas. Take a Todi Berry or something, maybe just one facet somewhere a composer may have found a spark in terms of newness, but then they have enriched so much that we are just drawing inspiration and trying to do. Probably you may try to use a ragam like a Valaj or create some new ragam. But again, let me bring back the point that when you are composing in a new ragam, the approach to the ragam, you are following what Tyagaraja did only. So if a Chandra Jyoti, you will immediately go back to Chandra Jyoti if you want to see a rare ragam of how it explored, how is explored, or some Vakra ragam if you are going to devise a scale, how the Vakratva has been handled by him. So all this, again, we go back to them only. A trivial ragam, a small ragam also, how he can make it blossom. So even if you are creating a new ragam and say that I am the creator of this ragam, if you go back, you will see that the approach, that is again a very beautiful subject. It's a very vast subject. I don't want to go into that. How the Purvangam, Uttarangam, two aspects he has explored actually. I use an example of this Chandra Jyoti, where you see that in Bhagaya Naya, it is the Purvangam plus the Mandrasthai exploration. Just the opposite in Shashi Vadana, it's a Uttarangam to the Purvangam. So these are only the two methods in which you can explore a raga. You can,
Right.
if you want to establish, you want to make it a mystery and just hover around two notes without making the listener understand what the raga is, then that's a different point altogether. But if you,
Right.
and that's where again, one last, on a last note, I would like to make a point that Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar or Shama Shastri again stand tall because the very first phrase they were able to give us a complete understanding of the quintessence of the raga. And that is
Right.
where it's very, very important. Even if it is not even going around the entire gamut, if it's just capturing 2-3 notes, within that also you will feel that it is this ragam. You will not even get an iota of doubt about what the ragam is. That is where they stood tall. So
Absolutely.
all this we have later composers also. If a Dharmavati maybe may not have been handled by Tyagaraja, but Bhajana Sayas Radha of Mysore was still follows the format
Correct.
in terms of the Pallavi Anupallavi Charanam. It follows the format in terms of the Anupallavi tune being repeated later, and the approach of the ragam, how Sampurna ragam, which is not very popular, has to be handled as against Kalyani. The
Right.
Kalyani, you can just handle 2-3 notes and establish a ragam, but for Dharmavati, again, it's trying to fight against the fittest. So
Yes.
Dharmavati
Yes.
has to flow completely up and down in order to understand, establish it itself. So all this again is the inspiration we derive from the Kriti in terms of Kriti.
But amazing, ma'am. Amazing. It again reiterates, re-emphasizes the fact that you can keep on drawing inspiration. You can
Right.
keep on drawing a lot from the compositions of the Trinity. Um, it is very trivialized at times, and in the search for newness, we try to explore new compositions and other things. But as you rightly say, finally you have to land back there. If you really want something of essence and something of really solid work, you still have to rely back on the compositions and on the work that the Trinity have given us, both from a musical perspective, from a melodic structure, from the laya, from the lyrics, from all. There is hardly anything they have not explored. So it is such a beautiful corpus of treasure that we have been given. And as you rightly say, it's important that we take it ahead, and use that in a much better way. I think it's been great, ma'am. I think the last few minutes, this exploring of this Kriti format has, as we say, as we would do in research, right? One topic you start, it brings out so many branches, and each of those branches turns out to be so interesting. So there were so many topics that we discussed that have spurred the ideas for me for future discussions in each
Okay.
of those topics. But it's amazing, ma'am. I really loved the discussion, and I hope you did also for the last few minutes. And I'm sure all the Rasikas would have enjoyed the conversation that we had. I'm really happy, ma'am, that we could have this discussion today.
Namaste and thank you very much. And I would also like to convey my appreciation to you because when you have well-informed people interacting, then it triggers our thought process also. So that way, I felt really very enriched because you have put a lot of thought-provoking questions to me also in terms of answering them. I once again thank you for this opportunity because such discussions really give us that scope to further think about the subject in a deeper manner. And of course, nobody can say that I've exhausted the topic and I've thought fully about it. So this is a never-ending process. And once again, I thank you very much for this. And I hope all the viewers also were able to take back something valuable from our interaction. Thank you. Namaskar.
Absolutely, ma'am. So, Rasikas, as we saw, such an inexhaustible treasure of the compositions of the Trinities. And this one we had, when I was discussing with Radha ma'am, we just thought, okay, we'll take up this one concept at least of the Kriti and try to explore. But as you can see, this time is not enough to even explore that. There's so much more to even discuss within the Kriti, the way Tyagaraja has handled the Kriti, the way Dikshitar, the way Shama Shastrigal, what kind of formats, what kind of structures they have given, as ma'am beautifully put it, how to handle an Apurva Ragam, how to handle Sampurna Ragam, what is the approach that they give. So these are all, each one of them is a topic of research, is a topic of deep dive. And this way, like it is, we say in Sanskrita, Magha and Megha are enough to exhaust one's life. The composition of Magha and the Meghaduta of Kalidasa. Similarly, probably a few compositions of the Trinity itself is enough to exhaust the life of a music lover and a musician. So I'm sure all of you enjoyed this very brief discussion that we had, and I sincerely wish that we have many more such discussions I am able to bring forth to you on Subbu's Corner on many such topics. Until then, you can visit Subbu's Corner on FB page as well as YouTube channel, and keep looking at the sessions, and visit, like, and subscribe. Until we meet next, namaskaram.